There is so much noise in our generation. The constant sounds of pings and notifications in our phones, the constant stream of articles and think pieces rushing down our timelines. There's an incredible amount of information we consume on a daily basis. Now, more than ever, our sense of community and consciousness has become more global. We are more aware of the injustices going on throughout our world. And whilst this has added credence and volume to many of these issues that matter, I think it has also made us numb. Numb to the pain and the violence and the war because we could not possibly feel it all. And if we did, well, what could we do? I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and I was sheltered from a lot of the inequalities I saw going on around me. My government's idea of development was destroying and demolishing poor communities, out of sight, out of mind, creating a facade of development. Now, when I was 16, I moved to the United Kingdom to pursue further education. And I suddenly became more curious of this country I had called my home. There was a pressure born on me to be a spokesperson or to be an ambassador of Nigeria. Many people around me hadn't heard of the country, or perhaps they had heard of Chinua Achebe or Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So I decided to do a lot of research, and I realized that I had been lucky. Luck should not determine whether I am married at age 13 or die at age 15 in childbirth. Luck should not determine whether I have access to clean water or whether I experience cholera in my lifetime. Luck should not determine whether I have access to sanitary pads or whether I must drop out of school once puberty begins. So after doing all of this research, I desperately wanted to give back. But I really didn't know how to or where I would even begin. Would I start with tackling corruption? Or perhaps I would look to campaigning against female genital mutilation, or maybe raising awareness about access to healthcare in my country. But in a country with problems that seemed endless, it almost felt impossible. But what I believe to be true now is when we are faced with many of these social problems, we should view them as opportunities to be change makers. Now, January of last year, there was a lot of outrage on Twitter in Nigeria about the price of sanitary pads. The price of these products had increased by double overnight. And whilst this increase seemed ridiculous, to be honest, I didn't pay much attention to it because I knew I could still afford these products. And then a tweet was retweeted onto my timeline asking, what would happen to girls who now could no longer go to school? Where would they go? I began doing more research again, and I read a UNESCO publication that said 1 in 10 girls in sub-Saharan Africa miss school during their period. 1 week becomes weeks, becomes a month, becomes a year, and eventually these girls drop out of school altogether. I had never once thought about how the impact of this basic product could affect the lives of millions in my country. And to put it into perspective, 65% of Nigerian females do not have access to sanitary pads. This tweet, for me, was a call to action, and it sparked interest in 6 other girls too. And together, we formed an organization called Sanitary Aid for Nigerian Girls. In our first month, through crowdsourcing, we were actually able to raise 800,000 naira. Sounds a lot, but it's really just $2,000. But we were incredibly excited about the work that we would embark on. Interestingly, at this point, we had not met each other. Our founder is based in the UK, I'm here in the US, and the rest are scattered across the country. Now, you may have heard, perhaps, that African communities or cultures don't value the girl-child education. And whilst that may be the case, in some circumstances, there are real structural barriers that prevent girls from completing their education. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to volunteer in a public school in Nigeria, and I observed an interesting phenomenon. When a girl would want to go to the bathroom, she would go with 3 or 4 of her friends. The 3 or 4 of them would form a circle around her as she crouched down to dig a toilet bowl. And here she would use the bathroom as her friends protected her and offered her a sense of privacy. In these environments, there is no dignified way to experience your period. So what our organization aims to do is to provide free sanitary pad for girls in public schools and internally displaced people's camps. To date, we have raised 3 million naira, which is just around $10,000. We have a vast network of 73 volunteers across 8 states, and we've been able to impact the lives of 6,000 girls in my country. So whilst I'm here at Brown, taking a full course load and living part-time at the Rockefeller Library, I manage our website, as well as our international fundraising efforts. And this is nothing compared to being on the ground, interacting with these girls whose lives we're changing. It is important work, and it must be done. I believe as a generation, we cannot afford to be passive. There is something that each and every one of us must do. And I don't believe we should wait until we have achieved a certain sense of financial security. There is something we can do today, so please do something now. So here's how you can change the world around you. Ask yourself, what is it that you're passionate about? Or, what social problem fuels you with rage, and how can you channel that rage towards something good? Next, read all that you can about the topic, because I believe that knowledge is power. And once we have the passion and the knowledge, we're already halfway there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or to found your own NGO. Instead, you can find organizations that are in line with your values and care deeply about this issue you share. Lend your voice, donate to these causes, sacrifice your time. We must be relentless in this pursuit of change we seek in our world. Our activism should not start and end on the internet. Ask yourself, what would you do if you could do anything and you knew you wouldn't fail? What is your vision for our future, and how are you going to contribute to creating that future? I believe that we ought to be the change that we wish to see. Thank you.